Thank you so much, Raylan, and thank you, Alan, and thank you to all of you and the Natural Dharma community for hosting me today. It is such an honor, as always, and great privilege to be with you, especially on this holiday weekend when I know most people have a lot going on. So, thank you so much for taking the time to join together with Sangha and to explore, meditate, contemplate, and practice together. So today we're going to be talking about something that is means a whole lot to me and was one of the first teachings that I was exposed to when I went to the monastery. That really inspired me in my and continues to inspire me in my personal path. These four stanzas or lines are known as the four dharmas of Gampopa. Gampopa was the heart son or main lineage recipient of the famous yogi that maybe a lot of you have heard of, Milarepa, who was Marpa's student. And Gampopa was actually the first monastic in the lineage, which is really interesting because before that, the lineage of Marpa and Milarepa, that lineage was held by householders or yogis, people that were not monastic. So it's kind of interesting that Gampopa was the first monastic to hold this. And Gampopa was a doctor as well as being a monastic. And he was a doctor first. So he was a doctor. He was always interested in the Dharma. He was born in the year 1079. And he was always interested in the Dharma. He was really a curious and smart young man. And he received teachings from many different schools of thought in the Dharma community at that time. And then he became a doctor. And then at the age of 24, he married a young woman that he loved very much. And she became very ill, terminally ill with cancer or some kind of illness. And as she was suffering and dying, it was very difficult for him, of course, because he loved her very much. And also because she, that he couldn't, as a physician, help her on a physical level. And also, she was experiencing, as you can imagine, we're all afraid of dying. That's a lot of fear around her death. And he tried to talk to her, like, what are you the most afraid of? What's feeling really pressingly fearsome at this time? And she expressed the sense of that. She said, I love you so much, and you're still so young. And I think about how you're going to have this whole life as a young person without me. And it breaks my heart. And Gampopa was apparently a noble romantic because then he took his monastic vows as she was dying, and he took his vows of celibacy, and he became a monk in the Kadampa tradition. And then shortly after that, after he became a monastic, she passed away, and he began his monastic training in the Kadampa tradition. And the Kadampa tradition is slightly different. They don't have any yogic roots as the Karma Kaju tradition does. And so it's a little more formal. I don't know. I think a lot of you have probably heard this from Lama Liz or Lama Willa. The Kadampas are the school where they do like at nighttime, a mindfulness training, or during the day is separating. They used to count stones, like the white stones were the virtuous thoughts or deeds you did throughout the day, and the darker stones represented the unvirtuous things you did the day. So it could be a little dogmatic and heavy handed. And I think Gampopa was like, I'm not getting such a full picture through this Kadampa school and getting the depth of practice. So he sought out at the time living, very famous yogi Milarepa, who was off in the mountains doing Tumo Kundalini practice by himself and living, free with long hair, not a monastic at all, refused to ever step foot in the monastery. He used to say a famous line, if you if you wrap a piece of shit in gold, it's still a piece of shit. And that was him referring to himself, that you could adorn me with the robes of a high being and revere me, but I'm still just going to be the blood and bones that I am. So anyway, he sought out Milarepa and then trained extensively with Milarepa and recognized fully the nature of his mind. And then he became known as the founder of the Dakpo Kaiju, which he was called the doctor from Dakpo, which is where he was from. And then his disciples were started what is called the four great and eight lesser. I don't like the valuation of greater and lesser, but that's just for technical terms how it's referred to. But these four great lineages, I'm not going to go into the eight because there's just too many and it doesn't really serve anyone's purposes for today. But just to give you an idea, that would be the Karma Kaju, which is the lineage that Lama Willa and I did our retreat in. So that's came from the Karmapa, and Gampopa's one of his main students, of these four main students, was Dusum Chempa, which is the first known Karmapa. And Dusum Chempa is what started this Tolku lineage that we have in the Karma Kaju, the way that you notice the Dalai Lama is of the Galupas, that Tolku lineage. And so there will be future Dalai Lamas and previous Dalai Lamas. So now the Karmapas, that was started by Dusum Chempa, which was the Gampopa's heart son. And then it's the Barum Kaju. So we have Karma Kaju, Barum Kaju, Padru Kaju, and Salpa Kaju. Anyway, but so Gampopa was a big deal. He also, what monasticism did for the lineage was it helped a lot of, like Milarepa and Marpa's traditions before them were passed on orally. And as they were living in caves and had other things to do, you know, Marpa was busy farming and raising kids and being married. Milarepa was busy, you know, off in the hills, meditating. They didn't really have time or energy or want to be writing things down. That just wasn't their vibe. And so Gampopa was the first person, as a monastic, as an educated person, or you know, formally academic person, to be writing things down and beginning a more calculated form of transmission that could take place through writing and sharing different pages and things like that. So we have a lot to owe Gampopa. Gampopa also wrote an important canonical text that you may have heard of, practiced, or studied with, called the Jewel Ornament of Liberation, which kind of goes through, he was known for, he really was a prolific person, and he really liked to be comprehensive when he talked about the view. And so he wrote a lot of practices and texts that were commentaries that would go sort of like from the beginning all the way to the end, and he didn't skip anything in between. So I just wanted to give you a bit of a historical background on Gampopa. And now we're going to take refuge, and then we're going to center ourselves and meditate before we go into these four dharmas. And actually after, yeah, that's what we'll do first. Yeah, refuge. In Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, we go for refuge until enlightened. By the power of generosity and the other perfections, may we realize Buddhahood for the benefit of all. In Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, we go for refuge until enlightened. By the power of generosity and the other perfections, may we realize Buddhahood for the benefit of all. In Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, we go for refuge until enlightened. By the power of generosity and the other perfections, may we realize Buddhahood for the benefit of all. Okay, so without further ado, find yourself a comfortable seat, whether that's seated on the ground, with your legs crossed, or in a chair with your feet firmly planted on the ground, or laying down, whatever best suits your body's natural ability and comfortability. To the best of your ability, keep your trunk and spine upright. This allows for the steady and natural flow of breath without being impeded. Imagining that there's an invisible string going up through the crown of your head, pulling you gently. Relax your shoulders, relax your stomach. Allow your eyes should be open and your gaze slightly downward and in front of you, not focusing on anything in the visual field, but simply resting your eyes on whatever you see, as if a butterfly resting on a rock. Just gently rest your eyes on the visual field in front of you. Don't alter your breath in any way. Allow your breath to serve as an anchor for your awareness. And as thoughts arise, you can simply label them thinking and let them pass with the breath. And slowly we'll go through a body scanning meditation, cultivating somatic presence. Beginning, bring your attention, breath, and awareness to your feet, breathing in and out through the sensations of your feet, noticing any sensations that arise or lack thereof, simply noticing them and let them pass through with the breath. Slowly move your attention, breath, and awareness from your feet up through your ankles and calves, imagining that you're able to breathe in and out through your lower legs, noticing any sensations that arise or lack thereof, simply noticing them and letting them pass through with the breath. If at any point visualization seems cumbersome, just return to the natural breath. Breathing in and out through the sensations, your attention, breath, and awareness on your lower legs. Slowly move your attention, breath, and awareness up through your knees, thighs, hamstrings, imagining that your breath is filling that area of your upper legs. Imagining that you're able to breathe in and out through your upper legs, noticing any sensations that arise or lack thereof, simply noticing them and letting them pass through the breath with your awareness. Slowly allow your attention, breath, and awareness to move from your upper legs through the trunk of your body, noticing any sensations that arise in your stomach or lack thereof. Simply notice them, see them, witness them, and let them pass through with the natural breath. Allowing your attention, breath, and awareness to wrap around to your back from your stomach, so that your attention, breath, and awareness fill the space all the way from your stomach through your back, noticing any sensations that arise in your back, simply noticing them, letting them pass through with the breath. Slowly allow your attention, breath, and awareness to travel to your hands. Imagining that you're able to breathe in and out through your hands, noticing any sensations that arise or lack thereof, simply noticing them and letting them pass through with the natural breath through your hands. Breathing in and out through your hands. Slowly allow your attention, breath, and awareness to move up through your forearms and upper arms so that your whole arms are filled with your attention, breath, and awareness, imagining that you're able to breathe in and out through the pores of your arms. Noticing any sensations or lack of sensations arising, simply letting that pass through with the natural breath. Allow your attention, breath, and awareness to travel up through your arms, through the shoulders and chest, that heart area. Allowing your attention, breath, and awareness to fill your chest and heart area. Breathing in and out of the pores through your chest. Noticing any sensations that arise and simply letting them pass with the breath. Slowly allow your attention, breath, and awareness to move from your chest to your neck. Imagining that you're able to breathe in and out through the entirety of your neck, noticing any sensations or lack of sensations arising. Simply letting that pass through with the awareness on the breath. Slowly move your attention, breath, and awareness from your neck up through your face and head. Imagining that you're able to breathe in and out through the entirety of your face and head and all through all the pores. Noticing any sensations arising and simply letting them pass through the breath. Slowly move your attention, breath, and awareness all the way through your body, from the crown of your head all the way to the tips of your toes, waking your body with the sensation of breath, as if you're able to breathe comprehensively through every pore in the body. Breathing in and out through your entire body. Noticing the sensations of your body as a whole. Simply noticing and letting it pass with the breath. Okay, now slowly bring your attention, breath, and awareness back to this present space together, adjusting your gaze and your body, taking a moment to stretch or have a drink of water. So I always like to start with long meditation first, because meditation is really in Buddhist practice, and it's the meat of the sandwich. We study and we contemplate, and then we meditate. And we're going to talk a lot about that, because that is actually the first, that pertains to the first of the 4 Dharmas of Gampopa. So actually, Raylen, if you wouldn't mind pulling up those 4 Dharmas so people could see them. And for good measure, I'd love to read them aloud together 3 times. Okay. And then if you want to, you could be festive and use this mudra, which is the mudra that Gampopa used, his teaching mudra, and it's the mudra that my teacher used. So you take your forefinger and thumb, pinch them together, and then you do the same thing, reflecting it back, sort of like an infinity. They're topping each other, or like a rare bird. And this is a teaching mudra, and you'll often see Buddha statues in this mudra, and you'll certainly see Gampopa statues in this mudra. Grant your blessings so that my mind may be one with the Dharma. Grant your blessings so that Dharma may progress along the path. Grant your blessings so that the path may clarify confusion. Grant your blessings so that confusion may dawn as wisdom. Grant your blessings so that my mind may be one with Dharma. Grant your blessings so that Dharma may progress along the path. Grant your blessings so that the path may clarify confusion. Grant your blessings so that confusion may dawn as wisdom. Grant your blessings so that my mind may be one with Dharma. Grant your blessings so that the Dharma may progress along the path. Grant your blessings so that the path may clarify confusion. Grant your blessings so that confusion may dawn as wisdom. Thanks for doing that. Okay, so the first of the 4 dharmas that we just read is grant your blessings so that my mind may be one with Dharma. It sounds a little esoteric. Could be a line from maybe Star Wars, right? Like something they say to Jedis, maybe. But we're going to break it down so that it is firmly rooted in reality, and so we can sort of understand how to work with this. So when we first, what does it mean to become one with the Dharma? When we first read about, hear, learn, and experience the teachings, they can often seem unrelatable, unattainable, remote from our experience, or certainly unlived in our lives, right? So you learn, but over time, as we learn to sort of practice, study, and contemplate and meditate, the Dharma can become part of us, part of our view and understanding of the way we see the world and what we do in it. So Gampopa talks about this process, which is known as Tusung Gom, which is to study, contemplate, I didn't mean to do that, and meditate. So in the 3 stages of becoming one with the Dharma, we begin by listening. So another translation of study, contemplate, and meditate that people use is listening, contemplating, and taking to heart. So in this first phase of listening, we simply have to listen and clearly understand the concept. So let's use an example of the concept of karma. When we first hear about karma, or at least when I did, I was so entrenched in a Judeo-Christian thinking process surrounding it. So all I could think about was a sort of dogmatic notion in which, we are going to get in trouble. We're bad people for doing bad things, and we're going to be punished, right? That we're sort of getting this cosmic retribution for our unseemly actions, which is in fact not what karma is in a Buddhist context. So the word karma literally means cause and effect. So I like to think about karma, or when I explain the definition of karma, to think about it in terms of the way a scientist thinks of the laws of cause and effect, right? So when you throw a stone at a window, if it's at the right speed, velocity, angle, everything, you might break the window. That's cause and effect. There isn't any sauce on that. It's not necessarily talking about that the rock is bad and the window is a victim, right? Those are things that come with different levels of cause and effect, actually. So even when there is intentionality, right? So if your intention is to hurt someone and you throw a rock at them, that adds another level of cause and effect, right? Because you intended to hurt somebody and then you hurt somebody. And so that subject object relationship and there are further causes and effects going into it, but there is no kind of magic in it where, in the context of, Christianity, for example, there's a notion of original sin. In Buddhism, it's quite the opposite. In fact, there is this Tathagata Garbha, which is Buddha nature, that we're all born with a basic goodness, a seed of basic goodness, that we're all inherently good. And this seed of pervasive awareness that we all always already possess is our basis, right? So when we learn about karma, when we begin by listening, we hear about how karma is actually talking about cause and effect from a more scientific, less dogmatic perspective. Then we begin to contemplate what karma is all about. And we do this by comparing this notion or idea with our experience. So, for example, I notice that when I tend to focus on the faults of others, which I've definitely gone through that a lot in my life, various phases, right? Various moments. It's things are changing a lot, just like the weather in my mind. It usually kind of brings about my own unhappiness, right? Because the more I focus on the negativity of others, I don't know, kind of puts a chip on my shoulder. Kind of means that I'm kind of doing half full, half empty kind of mentality. And what it usually reflects in me, I've noticed, is that I'm also kind of criticizing myself, right? There's a lot of judgment there. And judgment is the antithesis of that Buddha nature. Buddha nature is naturally accepting, inherently open, and non judgmental. And so, in our lack of becoming aware of our true awareness, we have a lot of judgment. And that judgment is sort of like trying to trap that energy. So, while the mind is naturally spacious, it also possesses this energy, a productive energy. That productive energy is oftentimes referred to as luminosity or clarity. So the mind is both the mixture of emptiness and luminosity, or emptiness and clarity. So it has this sort of like oceanic open sky aspect, and it also has this productive moving aspect that you'll notice that even when you're sitting and doing Shinei meditation, which is shunyata, when you're sitting there, often it's punctuated by these rising waves of thoughts, right? And as we talked about in my last session that we did together, the point of meditation is not to try and subdue your thoughts or like tamp them down, but rather to let the mind settle and sort of accept the presence of thoughts as they arise, noticing their impermanence, that they come and go. And then over time, recognizing, through law tongue or insight meditation, you can begin to examine, what are these thoughts made of, right? Are they different? Are they like a different fabric of that sort of peace and quietude that I experience in between them? No, they're not. They're not actually. And you'll begin to notice that not through talking about it, but through experience and meditation, right? So, with karma, you begin by listening to, what does karma mean in the Buddhist context? It literally means cause and effect. Then you begin to contemplate and compare this notion and idea with your own experience. That's the contemplating. And then the third stage is taking it to heart. And that's where we begin to automatically apply this concept to our experience, where karma becomes part of our worldview. And this, I think, takes time because, why, if we just were to begin to have this notion of like, oh yeah, karma means cause and effect. I feel bad when I do bad things. And so don't do bad things. That's kind of just like putting another child gate or child lock on your, if your mind is a car, it's sort of like trying to put a band-aid on it. But when I say like really contemplate and like bringing this notion to heart, to really take it to heart, means it takes a lot of time, right? To examine our actions and our behavior, and to meditate a lot, and to think about like what happened, to really reflect on our experiences. When I was in retreat, um, I remember, there's so many hours of just sitting and meditating and, unlike when I have 3 children, at home now. Um, and there's such a depth that can come just from giving yourself that space. And with Buddhism and with one's path, which is, the spiritual path, there's no path apart from our own footsteps, apart from our own experience. There is no path apart from our own experience. So Buddhism is supposed to be a non-dogmatic, non-theistic tradition, which means that the very best and the right thing for you to do is to be right where you are, to really understand things from your own side, not from someone else's. And even when you have a spiritual teacher or guide or guru or someone helping you along the way, it's only the finger pointing at the moon. You have to discover that languageless quality, that this inherent awareness and wisdom can only come from pouring yourself into the teachings. There is no dharma without you filling it up with your understanding. So which leads us to this. So yeah, becoming one with the dharma takes a lot of time, right? It's maybe takes forever, I think, or my whole life, our whole lifetimes. It's something in process, which is also a really important thing to recognize when we practice, is that the process is the path. That we often, with our type of capitalist world that we live in, we're often, and with our selfhood, right? Because we have a finite quality to our existence. We know that we're not going to live forever, but we are often seeking to live in Aristotelian plot structures where there's a very defined beginning, middle, and end. And I dare say that our path, we shouldn't think about it like that, but that the path is an unfolding, process oriented experience where depth of experience can occur in one single moment. And that is sort of like infinity in a grain of sand, that we can't necessarily project this end goal, which is often why a lot of Western teachers today are not as much using the word enlightenment, because for us, it can become this rigid, unattainable goal, and then we're missing out on the actual journey as the goal kind of thing that we should be working on, which is just to be here now. Like the present moment of awareness is it. So in order to get there, we have to really be here and not elsewhere, projecting something else happening outside of ourselves. So that brings us to the second of the 4 dharmas. Grant your blessings so that dharma may progress along the path. So I don't know if you noticed this. So in the first line, it's grant your blessings so that my mind may be one with the dharma. But then the languaging is a little different. And even though this is a translation, right? It says, grant your blessings so that dharma may progress along the path. It decidedly doesn't say, even in the Tibetan, it does not say my dharma. And there's a reason for that. Gampopa was very purposeful in doing that. So grant your blessings so that dharma may progress along the path. And as Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche liked to say, ego cannot attend its own funeral. So it's the dharma that progresses along the path, not our personal selves. So Robert Priest, I don't know if any of you have heard of him. He is a Westerner who wrote a lot about the Vajrayana. So first of all, before we get into the idea of ego funeral, we should really talk about how important it is in this context to have a healthy ego. A healthy ego means to even like be curious about who we are as we are. That is fundamental to our spiritual path, right? So you can't say, or you could say, but it's not helpful to say that I don't want to be Zoe as I am now, right? It's not actually helpful to sort of jump ahead in the board game and go from home base to, I want to be the Zoe that's already different and understands everything. First, we have to really, and I'll shave off the word first because let's get rid of the concept of like linear time. But we have to really, it is part of the path to get to know ourselves completely. And that's how we discover the emptiness of ourselves. So we can only discover the inherent emptiness of ourselves through fully rooting in our experience of a selfhood. We cannot deny our experience and just be like, well, a self is not real. I'm not real. This is an illusion. I'm an illusion. What I do doesn't really matter. What I think doesn't really matter. That's like the opposite. That's the antithesis of what we're going for. In fact, we're going to go headlong into really recognizing what's going on. Like, I noticed that I'm having a lot of sadness coming up about this. Why? Like finding just infinite curiosity instead. So this openness and curiosity that goes into discovering, actively discovering the nature of our awareness or our selfhood is so important, and it is integral to our path of understanding emptiness. So emptiness of self basically refers to the fact that we are made of many different causes and conditions coming together. So I always give this example of the table, right? You see a table that you eat on, your dining room table. Is it just a table? Well, like you can call it, we call it a table, right? But it comprises, it was made, first somebody cut down some trees, then they took it to a factory, and then they cut it, and then they sanded it, and then they assembled it, they nailed it together, and then they turned it into a table. But it wasn't just a table. And even a table, you can call it a table, but it's actually a collection of different causes and conditions. So that's what we mean by emptiness of self. We do not mean that there isn't an experience of self. There is an experience of self. And that's why we have to go headlong into understanding what that is. And in understanding and delving into that experience, we find that our experience of selfhood is brought to you in part by a myriad causes and conditions. And that is what we mean by emptiness of self. So grant your blessing so that Dharma may progress along the path. So it's the Dharma that progresses along the path rather than thinking of ourselves getting better and better. It's rather that we become more united with this understanding of Dharma. The teachings direct us in this sense of self. The teachings direct us and whether or not the self truly exists in the conventional way we believe it does. So as we, grant your blessing so that the Dharma may progress along the path, we can't say my Dharma because we're learning through these teachings, through the path, that the self isn't quite existent in the truly conventional way. So use your science brain again. And it doesn't mean to wipe out your experience, because we do experience a selfhood, but rather in the Dharmic context, in the Buddhist Dharmic context, what emptiness, the self is known as being empty, which means it is made of different causes and conditions coming together rather than being one solid entity. And it's only through meditation, both Shinei or Shamatha or Latang, which is insight meditation and contemplation, that we can say with conviction that this is the case. So emptiness and its discovery, even though we can talk about it through many really dynamic, complex academic teachings, the real way to discover its truth is through meditation. And there's no way of getting around it, which is why I also said that I can, meditation is like the meat in the sandwich. It's really what makes a sandwich. Because if you just were to read about all of this and not meditate, I don't think you'd get very far. In fact, I know you wouldn't, because that's where the meaning comes from, is joining that with your mind stream, and that is only what happens through the process of meditation. So in this context as well, I'd like to say that the word dharma has multiple meanings, and as it always does. So dharma means teachings, refers to the teachings. Dharma also refers to natural law, the way, just like simply the way things work, which leads to sort of this, there's like a dharma of each thing. So you might hear people say like the different worldly dharmas, the 8 worldly dharmas, which refers to like there's different ways that things work. So there's a dharma of making coffee. There's a dharma of getting up. There's a dharma of going to sleep. So dharma is used in a lot of ways here. So when he says grant your blessings so that dharma may progress along the path, it's talking about all of it. It's completely comprehensive. It's referring to all the meanings of dharma. May my experience of the dharma completely ripen so that it is joined with my mind stream and I further understand its true meaning and how it applies to my experience. So much so that it becomes my experience, a part of my experience. So I want to take a moment now, because this is sort of dense and a lot. I'm saying a lot of things and I'm just rattling them off, and we still have 2 more dharmas to go. I want to just take a moment to answer any questions, or if you wanted me to like go back and reiterate something, or you wanted to share something that came up as I was discussing any of this. I wanted to take that moment. So feel free to unmute yourself or raise your hand and let me know if you wanted to share something or ask a question at this time. And if not, we'll just keep going. Okay, making sure I'm not missing anything. Okay, great. All right, we will keep going. So the third one I think is really important, just because of that dogmatic phraseology that sometimes gets in our way, or at least in my way, as someone, gets in my way, can get in one's way. The third one is grant your blessings so the path may clarify confusion. So before I get into this one, I want to say that confusion is, I'd like us to have less judgment about being confused, because it isn't helpful. Again, when I was in my early 20s and at the monastery, I was first learning these, and I would often vilify this confusion, like, oh, if only I wasn't so confused. And obviously everyone here is like much more wise and starting from a way stronger footing and basis than I was at the time, being like young and naive person. But just to remember throughout our process that giving ourselves grace and gentleness, and recognizing that in the Buddhist context, at least, confusion isn't like an ugly before, an unsavory before and after picture. Confusion isn't like this unattractive before. Confusion is the energy of mind not recognizing itself. That's what confusion means. That's really all that it means. And I don't blame anyone for that. So don't blame yourself for that. That's just kind of the way the cookie crumbles. People often ask, like, and would ask my teacher, when did that happen? Like, when was there a fall from grace? When did this confusion, how did we become confused or like unaware or ignorant of our true nature? And my teacher would always, sometimes he would say nothing. He would just be like, and people were very unsatisfied with that. And then oftentimes he would say, from beginningless time, which is kind of the same as, so that being said, the Dharma isn't like a big daddy savior or like something that you should be glomming onto as if you're this weak, inept, bad, confused being who needs some saving. Confusion, again, is like a scientific term in the Dharma, which literally refers to the luminous quality of mind, that productive, energetic quality of mind that kind of caused this manifestation. It doesn't recognize itself, right? So rather think of your mind as like a baby that is learning how to walk or something. And for whatever reason, the baby hasn't learned how to walk yet. But once it learns how to walk, it will recognize that it is made of the same stuff, right? That this is a sort of integrated experience of being rather than ignorance and awareness, but that they're part of the same coin. So people who have seen me teach here before, I often use what my teacher taught me, which is that the word for enlightened or liberated awareness, or awareness with a capital A, is Rigpa in Tibetan. And the word for confusion or ignorance is Ma Rigpa. So it is simply the negation of Rigpa. Both terms contain Rigpa in them. They are two sides of the same coin. So our confusion is actually the other side of our awareness. So once our awareness can recognize itself, our confusion is self-liberated. That is what that term means, self-liberated. So the very mechanism of our own confusion is the same mechanism of our liberation. And that is the crux of the Vajrayana path, what makes it different from the other Hinayana, Mahayana. The fundamental understanding of the Vajrayana is that the same fabric of our confusion is the tool, the liberatory tool, because it recognizes that the confusion is made of the same substance of our liberated awareness, that they are not two different things. So grant your blessings so that the path may clarify confusion. So on a more kind of basic level, we practice because we yearn to understand our own situation, ourselves, and how we relate with and to the world, right? That's why we begin this spiritual path anyway, right? And then through Shane or shamatha, we cultivate peaceful presence. We're just learning how to exist with our thoughts as they are without messing with them, right? That's what Shane is. We're just learning how to peacefully coexist with ourselves, essentially. And once we practice this type of Shane or shamatha meditation, we begin to notice that this peaceful presence is often punctuated by thoughts, right? Which is why there's the whole, notice a thought, label it as thinking and let it pass, things like that, right? And that is a method created because that's just the way the mind works. So then through insight meditation, which is also known as latang or vipassana, we can see clearly the nature of our thought-based projections. And then in doing so, they become insubstantial, rather impermanent. And within, and the way that happens is because through cultivating and recognizing the spacious awareness, that peaceful presence, these thoughts become insubstantial in the presence of our naked awareness. They just do. And the reason they just do is because it's like a cup of water being poured into the ocean. Because the water is made of the same material as the ocean. And so these thoughts, which seem at first to stick out like sore thumbs or sticks in a smooth area, they're actually waves in the ocean. They're just part of that same awareness, but another aspect of that awareness. So confusion becomes clarified because we see that it is naturally empty. So the confusion becomes clarified because it is naturally empty. And in this sense, the emptiness becomes, the meaning of emptiness in this sense is more so that the thoughts, the substance of those thoughts are also impermanent, and that they are self-arising and self-liberated. And how are they self-arising and self-liberated? So they come because the nature of our mind is both empty and clear, and this clear quality is productive. It's always projecting. Our mind is naturally within space. There's room for projection, and we fill that void. We just keep filling that void with things. And so once we recognize that the things churning up and that emptiness, that they're in union, that is when it becomes self-liberated. When we recognize that the fabric of their thoughts is the same as the fabric of our naked, spacious awareness. Which brings us to the fourth. So I'm going to go through this fourth one, this is all pretty dense. They're all very dense. And then after I go through this fourth one, we're going to take a bio break or a break, and then we'll have Q&A and dedicate. So the fourth of the four Dharmas of Gampopa is, grant your blessings so that confusion may dawn as wisdom. So confusion can only dawn as wisdom through a profound understanding of mind and where confusion comes from. So that dovetails what we were just talking about, which is that confusion isn't anything other than mind not recognizing itself. Confusion itself, that non-recognition, is made of the same material. You can recognize non-recognition through its own apparatus, essentially, which is sort of a tongue twister for the brain until you meditate through it. Again, one of those things, definitely finger pointing towards the moon. There isn't a way other than through meditation and pointing out instructions that will become truly clear. Meditation is the way that you will find that. And meditation is the truest medicine and the truest tool that we can have. And I think meditation is honestly what makes Buddhism such an incredible path, because it offers such a tool. I remember being in college and being really greatly inspired by certain Western philosophers I was learning about. And, they're kind of talking about the same stuff, at least some of them, but there was never a tool or practical method to apply those teachings or do anything about them. So it was like, I'd be reading something and it would be talking about like the nature of phenomena and how that there's this cycle of experience and perception. And I was like, yeah, that makes total sense. But then it was like, okay, what do I do with that? Like, how do I discover that? And how does that discovery change me or allow me to experience that directly? And so meditation is that. It is that tool. It is the only real means of liberation. So mind is empty. Like I said, I gave the example of Rigpa and Ma Rigpa. Mind is empty like space. That productive, creative aspect, which is often referred to as luminosity. So, this ignorance of mind or confusion simply means that we do not experience the luminosity directly. We instead experience the luminosity as our thoughts that aggravate us, our thoughts that seduce us, our, you know, the things that come up in meditation, right? Like, what's for dinner? Oh, she didn't call me back. Kind of mad about that. Why didn't she call me back? Is she mad at me? That's actually luminosity. That's your luminous mind just producing, 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 producing. But the only way to recognize and self-liberate those thoughts from being part of a kind of limited, enclosed sphere in which we just get trapped in a hamster wheel, creating more and more and more and more like narratives about what's happening, to the point where suddenly the fact that she didn't call me back means I am mad at her because I think she's mad at me. And then I'm going to not call her. So even when she answers, I might not pick up. And suddenly I've lost a friend, and then I'm depressed for 6 months. That's what I mean when it becomes other types. The confusion with a capital C, which is like us not recognizing that those thoughts are self-liberated and kind of free to come and go, free to just arise, free to be playful, free to like give some information, but then be left behind. They become sort of, we try to like do freeze frames. And that's when we get bogged down in the mire of our own personal narratives. And again, there's nothing wrong with this innate, creative, luminous quality. It's what makes us who we are. And it is very much what our experience is. And we can't deny that. And no, I don't think that suddenly when you recognize the luminous, nature of mind, Mahamudra, which is the union of emptiness and clarity, and understanding that union, once we recognize that, I don't think that that means that suddenly we don't experience our experience. I think it means that we experience our experience with a certain full, spacious quality that allows us to have sort of an unencumbered joy of knowing the way things truly are. That's what I think. So right now, the way we experience, because we don't perceive our own luminosity directly, there seems to be a world out there, and then we're in here, right? We have this very dualistic framework for our experience. So yeah, I mean, that's pretty clear. Everything's out there, I'm in here. That's our experience. But the thinker and its thoughts are actually just the play of mind. The thinker and its thoughts are just the play of mind. And understanding that through meditation and living that through your meditation and bringing that post-meditation into your experience, that is wisdom or realization. So confusion can be transformed into wisdom because, in fact, confusion is secretly always already wisdom, which is the great hoax, but is also like the main staple in Vajrayana thought and practice, which is that our confusion is actually it goes through an alchemical process, but basically through becoming aware of our confusion for what it really is, it self-liberates, and you recognize that that confusion was actually unrecognized for what it truly was, which was naturally our wisdom, our luminosity. So we can begin through that process to experience thoughts and confusion as the energetic play of mind instead of getting bogged down by our storylines. And that's what I mean about a liberatory experience. Is I don't believe that liberatory experience means you will suddenly not experience what you're experiencing, but rather that you will no longer be attached or bogged down by all the storylines. So Milarepa said, I think it's Marpa said it to Milarepa, it's not samsara that binds you, but your attachment to it. So samsara refers to basically ma rigpa, or not experiencing our confusion as the free play of mind. And it's that sort of attachment. So that attachment is that sticky energy. So for example, it's what actually makes us experience and feel our feelings and get like sucked into them in a different way. So like my daughter is 2 and she can fall down like 2 stairs and like get pretty hurt and cry and cry and cry and cry. Or maybe that's not a good example because that's like a physical example. Okay, her sister can take something away from her and she's like really upset. She's crying, she's sobbing. She's like trying to hit her sister back or retaliate in some way. And then like very quickly after, it's like completely dissolved. Like she's ready to have a tea party with her big sister and they're totally good. And it's as if, it was just like a cloud passing in the sky. She expressed it and then it just went away. Like she didn't hold on to it at all. No grudge was had. She's still pretty young. And so emotions are like these energies. It's an energetic play of awareness, right? Emotion is based off of causes and conditions, right? We experience something and we react to it. But with our attachment, we take that experience and we solidify it. We solidify it, and then we solidify it by then saying, well, because my sister stole my doll 2 minutes ago, she's a bad person. I don't like and because she's a bad person, I don't like her. So judgment, William Blake used to say about, the great British poet used to say that judgment is the death of creation and imagination. He would always talk about how judgment, and he would actually write a lot about his editor, talking about how his editor was like the total buzzkill of his artistry. But really, it was a bigger metaphor for him. He was secretly kind of a Dharma guy, and he was talking about how judgment really is the antithesis of like wakefulness. So through shamatha, we really learn how to cultivate what's called non-judgmental awareness. Our awareness with a capital A is naturally non-judgmental. And so the more we can tap into this basic ground, this spaciousness, the more we're tapped into this non-judgmental space, the more we can. So judgment and attachment are kind of the same thing. So anyway, through confusion dawns as wisdom. Once it dawns as wisdom, we can experience thoughts and confusion as energetic play of mind, which sounds really nice. So I've just said quite a lot. I'm going to let's meditate and let some of that sink in for a couple minutes, and then we'll take a bio break. Hey guys, I'm sorry. Sorry about that. Just to give you a look into my natural habitat. This is our new house in Vermont, and that was my middle child, Uma, who this actually has a ladder that goes up to it. It's not even stairs. So somehow she managed to climb the ladder, which the door was closed anyway, but she could not get down by herself. So I just wanted to make sure that wasn't going to happen on my watch. Daddy somehow, with two other kids, lost track. Anyway. Welcome back. Uh, so yeah, my favorite part of being working with this community is always this part of the teaching, which is when I get to discuss and hear from all of you wonderful people. So I will open the floor to you to basically for anything, whether it's a question, something you want to share from your own practice and experience, something that came up, or if you have any other questions from your own experience or practice that you have, this is a really great time to use it. There's no such thing as a like, well, anything. I leave it to you. Anything that feels good, happy to share in this time with you all. So please feel free to ask any questions or share anything. Judith?
I must have about 4 pages of notes from this. Thank you. I'm very diving into it. I'm confused about how to contemplate, for example, Ripa, Maripa, anything that you've been sharing with us. How do I contemplate that to understand it, personally understand it without thoughts? I mean, I have to have the thoughts on them. And then we go to the meditation and the thoughts come and go. So I'm a little confused.
Absolutely. I really appreciate that question. A wonderful, excellent question. So basically, that's a really great part, question that always comes up and always came up for me, which is, so yeah, we use our discursive mind to think and contemplate, right? So for example, when you think about karma, let's use something like karma first, because in all fairness, terms like rigpa and marigpa are less contemplative. They are based on those are like Mahamudra terms that are usually used in pointing out, which comes just through meditation. But it all applies. But basically, so you might contemplate outside of your meditation practice, right? That's how you can just think about, for example, like, reflecting on, you might even reflect about how when you're driving, right? If you notice, so meditation, the word for meditation is gom, which means familiarization. So meditation is a process by which we familiarize ourselves with the way that our minds work. So once you practice meditation and work on that familiarization process, you might notice post meditation more about sort of like you're cultivating mindfulness, right? That's what mindfulness is, sort of attention to your thoughts and like how, so for example, as you're driving, you might even notice like when I was over there a mile away, I was thinking about my sister. And now I'm here at Hannaford's and I'm already thinking about next Christmas. So just noticing that, for example, being mindful enough over the landscape of your thoughts gives you an opportunity to recognize the impermanent nature of thoughts, right? How you can ruminate, right? And even in rumination, we think we're really just like kind of OCD obsessing about one thought, right? But within that, there's a lot of thoughts and there's always different things coming and going. Just noticing how thoughts come and go is a way to directly contemplate their emptiness. But the reason why Gampopa, for example, unites the three together of contemplation, meditation, what is it? What did I say? Tusungang. to like listen, contemplate, and join with your heart is that in meditation, so like you contemplate outside of meditation, then you meditate, and you will learn just through discovering in meditation the way that your thoughts come and go. You'll notice that there's a spacious gap between thoughts that you find. And then in insight meditation, you begin to examine and look at thoughts directly. And you'll ask yourself questions in insight meditation. Where does my thought go when it leaves? And it can't be answered, even though your discursive mind will try, and it exhausts itself. So they say that insight meditation is the union of meditation and contemplation, essentially, because you are looking at it, and then your discursive mind exhausts itself. So generally speaking, that is how you apply the contemplations in your meditation, where you can contemplate it, but then when you meditate, you do let the mind try and rest and just experience it in its freshness. So a Mahamudra pointing out instruction that is often given by Gampopa himself actually is to rest directly in the freshness. So in meditation, all we want to be doing is resting directly in the freshness. But even if you tried eventually to unite the two, you will find that that discursive mind will exhaust itself in the process of meditation. But I will say contemplation, you'll see that it has its limit outside of meditation, right? Like you can sort of contemplate Rigpa and Ma Rigpa, but none of it's going to make any sense until you just rest in the freshness. And then the mind is, it's self-liberatory. When the mind learns to see itself through the process of meditation, you will understand its true nature. Yeah. I don't know if that's helpful.
That was very helpful.
Okay. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Judith. Okay. I see Justine and then Raylan.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay, okay. I'm on my phone, so this is difficult. Um, so I really, form Dharmas of Gampopa was one of the first things I encountered in Dharma too. So I really appreciated that. Thank you. And for for me, it's always been this sort of struggle against that subject, what you referred to as the, Aristotelian plot structure, the subject object dualism that seems so pervasive in our Western culture. And
Yeah.
it seems it wants so desperately to attach, enlightenment, a sort of enlightenment, a happiness to, oh, my business is successful, I have a good job,
Yeah.
my kid went to an Ivy League school,
Yeah.
like, it's
Yeah.
really it's very silly. And I felt this pressure even as like a little girl. Like I was raised Catholic, but didn't really stick, and I remember saying to my parents, like, I don't want to go to church. And they were like, why? And I said, but I want to go outside. I want to go to the beach. I want to I
Yeah.
want to be with the world. I don't want to be in a place with all these like people, grown-ups who are no fun, right? And yeah, right? And then I did have a period of time in my life when I disavowed my inner world, and it
Yeah.
was very destructive for me. I'm still working on forgiveness for myself for that. But um, what was going on inwardly was it was sort of reacting to this pressure of like saying, oh, you should find happiness here, or why aren't you like us? You haven't done it.
Yeah.
And I just wonder if you can comment on that, because I mean, you know is we all feel and like know through our meditation, like there is no external savior. But
Yeah,
yet we're constantly being told, oh yes, there is one, or it comes in the form of this drug, and this it has like 50 terrible side effects. And
yeah,
it's crazy. So
totally.
yeah, that's just what I wanted to share. Thank you. Yeah.
No, thank you so much, Justine. Everything that you said, I can relate to on so many levels. And I really appreciate your honesty in sharing that and the vulnerability in doing that. So it's really complicated, like kind of what you shared. I just want to say, I don't talk a lot about it in this space, but even every organized religion, for example, because it is in human hands, which is sort of like a society-based thing. I think that anything, like Marx used to say, I am not a Marxist. I think the Buddha would have said, I am not a Buddhist. And Milarepa, I always loved him because he sort of was like, I am never going to be part of a monastery. Like, nope, 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 nope. And I will say organized religion, including certain sects of organized Buddhist places, can be harmful because there can be this sort of sense of hierarchy that happens when humans gather together. And it is based on this fundamental confusion, right? Of not recognizing the nature of the judgmental process inside of ourselves as being, having the potential for being self-liberated wisdom, like just that it's just made of this like natural energy, essentially, this just like productive, playful part of ourselves. But instead we like trap it, freeze it, and try and turn it into a system to like bog ourselves and others down. And so, I always love, you mentioned at the beginning this sort of forgiveness and finding self-love, right? That is not to be underestimated. And, Thich Nhat Hanh was so profound as a teacher because of what he shared about that. And like, I always think, or even like someone like Mother Teresa, like love, love is so like, that is the nature of mind. And so I think the more we can lean into like self-love, as like quirky or corny as it sounds, that is, I mean, the Mahayana path is all about that. Like you can't even discover, like you can't figure any of this out if you don't love yourself. And that's what I meant about cultivating a healthy ego, like loving you for you. And I think that means that requires quite a lot of energy. And if that's the sort of foundation and fundament of one's everything, then you're good. Like I'm working toward like that. If I loved myself more, I would be closer to any truth than I could possibly provide through what I've just said in the past hour and a half. Like there's something, what self-love means is it that when one really loves themselves, it means that there's true acceptance. True acceptance. True acceptance means that you're tapping into that non-judgmental awareness, which is the true nature of mind. So the closer you get to self-acceptance and self-love, it is completely liberatory. And I think really trusting your instinct of like, maybe you're not someone who wants to be in organized religious spaces. And guess what, Justine? I'm not either. I never will. I refuse to be referred to as Lama Zoe. It makes me really uncomfortable. I had an experience with my teacher having inappropriate boundaries and abusive power. And I turned away from Buddhism for like 6 years, and I refused to teach and I refused to practice. And I still struggle with aspects of organized Buddhism, but the reason I still believe is basically because of this great love that I believe we are all possessed of, this basic goodness inside of us, which allows for openness and like true love, like non-referential love that just like is inside of us, I really believe in that. And I think once Thich Nhat Hanh said something like, love is my teacher. And I believe in that. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. And I just wanted to say, th- there's a line from Antonio Machado I often think about. It's path maker, there is no path. The path is made by walking.
That's it.
So don't.
Totally.
So don't lead or follow, just
Yeah,
do your path.
totally. It's
So
the best. I love that. Thanks so much for
yeah,
sharing that, Justine.
thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Raylan and then Dorothy.
Hi Zoe, thank you so much. I just want to say thank you so much for sharing too and for teaching. Wanted to just share a little bit about Dana, and then I do have a question. So if you're not aware, one of our practices there at Natural Dharma Fellowship is Dana, which means generosity in Pali and Sanskrit. And there are so many ways to express generosity, being here, your attention, your presence, your practice. But I wanted to just speak specifically about financial gift offerings. It's through your generosity that we're able to offer programs like this continuously. And so I'm just going to put a link in the chat. If you do feel free to or move to donate, you can do so with the link. Again, thank you for your time. And my question, Zoe, is can you speak about pointing out instructions? Just because like when I read about it, they say like you have to have received it from like a qualified teacher. So I just want to learn more.
Sure. Yes. First of all, thank you for everything, for hosting, for sharing. Pointing out, so, dovetailing from, talking about Justine and organized systems, I find a little bit, even though I use the term pointing out quite a bit in this teaching, or at least a couple times, I find it slightly problematic in today's context where I do believe that it is possible to practice with a teacher, right, that you trust, but that a lot of the notions of like guru disciple relationships are espoused in earlier more traditional Tibetan teachings, I find can be problematic when not properly translated. So there can be, then what happens is there's like this, people can talk about like, oh my God, I'm doing Dorje Pamo because I got the initiation and it's secret. I can't even talk about it. And I only got it from Trangu Rinpoche and he's only accepting students that look like me. And I can't talk about it. And that's where I got my pointing out instructions, but I can't even talk about what that is. So just to say, if you ever hear someone talking like that, just walk away, just run far away and be like, that's not appropriate. But basically pointing out instructions, they should be given by someone who has had experience. And what I mean by experience is like a lot of meditation in their background, someone who's like really put in a lot of meditation time. And the reason for that is just like similar to, you shouldn't learn how to horseback ride from someone who doesn't know how to ride a horse, right? Like it should be from a qualified instructor. So when you receive pointing out instructions, it has to be from someone who has meditated enough to recognize fundamental qualities of their awareness through the practice of meditation. And basically what pointing out instructions are they're they tend to be pretty I want to say like poetic in a sense, and or sparse. They're not like they're the like antithesis of a lot of this sort of breaking down and using a lot of verbiage to like talk about something. It's, pointing out instruction can be as simple as like you're meditating with a close teacher, someone you really trust and who you trust knows what they're doing and what they're talking about, and people have given pointing out instructions through like a snap. That could be a pointing out instruction for someone. But then also it can be those pointing out instructions that you read in like the Naden Jamso, with like the Ocean of Definitive Meaning, written by one of the Karmapas, where it talks about like a lot of the Mahasiddhas will write these, like Saraha will write like, it is free, rest freely, rest loosely. That's a pointing out instruction. So it's rest in the essence of freshness. That is a pointing out instruction. But the context that it's given in is what makes it a pointing out instruction. Because me just saying that to you right now as we're talking isn't able to point out your nature of mind to you. So a pointing out instruction is given in the context of practice. Yeah, I don't know if that's helpful.
Yeah, very.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. And before we go, Dorothy.
Hi, Zoe.
Hi.
Well, I'm not sure how to ask this question. I ask this question all the time. Okay.
Here for it.
It's all about the middle way. It's all about attachment. I do meditate sometimes it's productive. Oftentimes I just sit there and think, and then I go, okay, that's enough.
Yeah.
But and now I don't know if I'm overly concerned, but I'm extremely concerned about this condition of the world, and particularly the condition of the United States, which I think is really going down the tubes, and it's going to bring the rest of the world with it. Through climate change, if nothing else, but we have a lot more going on than that. We have democracy itself, and I've been kind of in and out with different Buddhist groups, because I keep feeling that I'm getting this message to just let go of all that and don't think about it and don't watch the news and don't get engaged. And that, to me, that can't be it.
That's not it.
So, and I can get too engaged and it takes me right down with it. And I can be not engaged and live in a fantasy land. So what about the middle way with all this? How do you guide yourself in not going into one extreme or the other, and not just tuning out altogether?
Totally. It's a great question. And in fact, Dorothy, I've been a little bogged down in it. So I almost started today's teaching being like, how's everyone doing? I was like, okay, I don't know. I mean, that could really devolve, and I'm not going to do it. But I think you asked the question, and inside of your question, you gave yourself the answer, which is the middle way. And I think you know that, which is that when we are just, I have a friend of mine who's, in my mind, I'm always like telling her she's a hero. She's been a social worker for 25 years, and she works with foster youth. And so she's like really on the front lines right now, actually like hiding, like encrypting files so that ICE agents won't find immigrant children. Like, so she's like literally doing it. You know what I mean? And here I am like, what are we gonna do? It's terrible. I can't sleep at night. My children, the world, it's awful. Like I donate money to things where I can, and I march when I can. And, and then I do think it's a middle way where it's like, absolutely give refuge to someone running from ICE when and if you can. Donate when and if you can. March when and if you can. But there is nothing good about just sitting and ruminating on the world falling apart just in and of itself. Not that, I won't say any good, meaning give yourself soothe yourself when that happens. Because of course, if you're a thinking, feeling, empathic human right now, that's going to happen. It's a really genuinely scary time. And that is a valid feeling. So I'd say validate those feelings, self-soothe, and just try to find something that makes you feel grounded and helpful. I think being helpers where you can be is great. And sometimes we can't help, right? Sometimes we don't have the financial wherewithal. Sometimes we don't have the bodies to march. And so what can we do then? I do believe in the power of aspiration and prayer. I just do. They've done studies that have shown that people that are prayed for when they're ill, they do get better faster than people who aren't prayed for. I do believe in the power of aspiration and setting intentions. I think intentions shape our universe. So if you can't march and you can't pay for something and you can't open the doors of your house, I'd say set good intentions, pray. And when you're feeling so low that you're in a pit, give yourself that self-love, validate your feeling experience, and then give yourself the sweet breath of release that comes from knowing that there is an impermanence to all this one way or another. There just is, because there just always is, whatever that means. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. So with this, and that all being said, Dorothy, it is awful and I feel it too. So also community feels really helpful. That's what I have noticed, like sharing conversation and food and space with people that are like-minded at this time feels really helpful. And sometimes I think the power of the community is greater than the power of individuals. And as communities come together, I believe in change. So hopefully as communities come together, we can also impact for the benefit of the good.
You'll say one thing
Yeah.
I don't know if there's a lot of these around or not. I just encountered this prayer group, which is Wednesday evening, it's on Zoom, and it's exactly 20 minutes, so from 7 to 7:20 every Wednesday. And we just join in and there's a leader who promotes it. She might say a few words and then we just go into a 15-minute meditation. Then we're all praying. The way she views it is seeing peace, which I kind of like, as opposed to being peace, which sounds kind of hard.
Yeah.
If we're
I
seeing the Buddha nature in everyone, or we're seeing peace, that's good. So it's just a small group of people that get together for 20 minutes once a week.
Yeah.
And they're just on Zoom. So I don't know. Do you know anything about other like prayer groups that
I don't, but I mean, if you're doing that one, that's great. And if you even wanted to start one, I think that would feel good. Like if you have a few friends or family members who want to join you to do something like that, or even if anyone at NDF, I think if you introduce that, Raylan could pitch that, or yeah.
So just briefly, we do have what's called Mary Mahakalas group every Wednesday night. We meet for about an hour and a half, and it's really engaged Buddhism. It's co-creation. If you're interested, I'll put Laura's email. You can contact her and she can give you the Zoom information. But it's been a beautiful group and supportive for me and a lot of people.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Raylan. And thank you, Dorothy. I think that sounds like a great thing to do. Judith?
I know we're late, but I also wanted to share, there's something called the soft rebellion, which is there are other ways to rebel. If you're an artist, create. If you're a singer, sing, and one of it's with that intention of sharing what you can share with the universe. And one of my favorite sayings from it is that joy is not a distraction, it's a weapon. So, we can find these other ways to rebel as well if we're not someone who goes and protests or has money or.
Right. Absolutely. Thank you, Judith. And that's so right on. And also, peace, what is that quote? it's like be the change you want to see. And sometimes that happens just by, you know, doing the things that make you joyful, those like soft acts of rebellion, being kind to yourself, being kind to your family, like spreading joy and love in your small community. Like that small change is incrementally changes. If everybody were to do that, we would see a whole lot of change. So thank you so much, everyone, for coming today. Let's dedicate and then and go change the world. May the pure, brilliant sun of bodhicitta dawn in each and every heart and mind, dispelling the darkness of suffering and confusion unstoppably until all are fully illumined and awakened.